Hey there, today's October 25th, almost Halloween. I'm here wearing my Halloween colors out in the woods. Brailley's not with me today, but we're still exploring nature. So today is a nice, almost Halloween day. Lots of spooky stuff out here, lots of remnants of the life that was during spring and summer as they're preparing to go into hibernation. We'll see some of the remnants of that and plenty of spooky fall mushrooms. As you can see, fall is the time of year where the leaves fall off the trees and onto the ground, making a beautiful cover for the ground. A lot of nutrients soak into the soil and decomposing, making room for a lot of fungus. So some of my favorite fall mushrooms are out today. We'll go out and find them. We can see that fall is nesting season for mushrooms. We got two different types of nest mushrooms that I found right next to each other. The top one is called Poronidulus conchifer, the nesting polypore, and the bottom one is called Crucivelum levei, the bird nest fungus. They both have similar common names, but they're actually quite different. So we'll start by talking about the nesting polypore. This one, you can see the younger specimens just have a little cup-like structure, which is what it's named after, the nest. And then as they get older, they grow a fan-like bracket type of structure, similar to what you would see with turkey tail. This actually used to be part of the Trametes genus, but they moved it into its own genus, the Poronidulus, because of the unique feature of its life cycle, that when it first starts developing, it makes that cup-like nest structure for which it's named, and the sole function of that is to produce asexual spores that are dispersed. And both of the nesting polypore and the bird nest fungus actually have the same function in their nest, which is that it's shaped a certain way that allows physics to do some sort of thing that I'm not very well versed in, where like if a raindrop lands on it, it will bounce out of it and be able to shoot like up to 3 meters away. And that's their way of dispersing spores. As the raindrop bounces out of it, it carries spores with it all the way up to 3 meters. And then what's different about this Poronidulus genus is that as it gets older, the cup part stops producing the asexual spores. It kind of loses its function as the fan-shaped structure starts to develop. And you can see it has white pores on the bottom. Those are to produce sexual spores, and they have a similar function like other types of polypores, like the turkey tail mushroom, which it used to be in the same genus. So this is the nesting polypore and the two stages of its reproduction. Over here we got the bird's nest fungus, which bird's nest fungus is a name for an entire family of mushrooms that's called Nidulariaceae. I'll be honest, when I see these Latin names, I've only ever read them before, never actually heard them pronounced, so I might be pronouncing some of them wrong. That's okay. But the bird nest fungus, some characteristics of these, when they're young, they look like, little balls. They have a membrane growing over the top. They don't look like cups like this. They look almost like a small puffball or tan-colored wolf's milk. And then, as they get older, that small membrane comes off to reveal these cups with these tiny little egg-like structures, which is where the bird's nest fungus gets its name. These egg-like structures are having a hard shell, and on the inside of it, when it breaks open later, there's a bunch of spores in there that get dispersed. It has the same thing in common with the nesting polypore, which is that it's distributed with the raindrops by the same mechanism. It can get distributed pretty far. But it also is a lot different. It's not a polypore, its own family. And, of course, it has these eggs in it. The nesting polypore just has its spores microscopically distributed. And also, it doesn't have that second stage of the reproductive cycle. It doesn't produce any other structures than this. So that's Nidulariaceae. And this one in particular is called the common bird's nest fungus, which is Crucivelum levei. And some characteristics of this is that they have that brownish outer shell, and on the inside it's smooth. Other ones will have stripes on the inside. Their eggs are white. Some other ones will have like black or brown or gray eggs. And then also they grow on wood, which you also find a lot of ones belonging to other genus other than Crucibolum. A lot of them will grow out of the soil, feeding on dung. So those were our two mushrooms for our mushroom nesting season. The nesting polypore, Poronigulus conchifer, and the bird's nest fungus, Crucibolum levi. As you walk through the woods this Halloween, you may not come across any skeletons, but you might find some exoskeletons, as the insects are trying to make their way through their life cycle and be prepared for the winter. This is the molt of a caterpillar, likely as it was transitioning through instars. You can see it's got all the legs and all the hair still on it, which means that it was probably traveling through some earlier instars, like maybe the 4th and 5th instar of the caterpillar, because if it was about to spin its cocoon, it probably would have used the hairs in the cocoon and left behind a bald, hairless exoskeleton. And who does this molt belong to? There's a very good chance that it belongs to a fall webworm moth. This is what a fall webworm moth caterpillar looks like, the whole thing. It's probably not the same one that molted that shell because I found this quite far away from the other one. But I know that the fall webworm moths live in the same area because I found those two things close together. Fall webworm moths are called that because they make big tents and they live together. They make big tents out of their silk that helps provide them protection and warmth, since they do have their larval stage later in the year. You can still see them in their larval stage in October. This guy's probably just getting ready to pupate because they overwinter as pupas. So he's got to hurry up and finish out his larval stage so that he could be a pupa and survive the winter and become an adult. The fall webworm moths demonstrate quite a scary concept in nature, which is that they're an invasive species. But this species in particular doesn't really cause much damage to the ecosystem. They're able to live in peace and harmony with the new habitat that they've found. So it's a little bit spooky for Halloween, but not that scary. Over here is the yellow-edged bonnet, or Mycena citrina marginata. These mushrooms are very small, as you can see, and they range in color from brown, or luckily, like this one, we got a nice bright yellow one here. And you see that this one is growing on a leaf litter, which means it probably loves the fall. It's getting a lot of nutrients from the fallen leaves. It's got a nice orange stem and white gills that go to the stem. I think that in the genus Mycena has a pretty distinct appearance of the gills that I can't really put my finger on. But this is the yellow-edged bonnet, Mycena citrina marginata. I found this heavily decayed log that made a very good habitat for all kinds of stuff. Here we can see two different species of a hypoxylon fungus. The bigger one, that's more reddish, is probably belonging to the species Hypoxylon rubiginosum. You can see it makes a long stripe over there, and then you can see some tiny little black dots if you look closely. That's another species of hypoxylon that I'm not exactly sure what it is. And then over here we can see some cup fungus. You can see these little black cups. I don't know if I got a very good video, but small black cups, I don't know exactly what species. Another ascomycete fungus, just like the hypoxylon. And growing amongst it is a white crust fungus. So you can see the little teeth that are growing out of it, some type of polypore. I'm not exactly sure what species that is either, but just to show the diversity here on this log. And then, if you look closely, there's also some very old turkey tail growing out of here. So far we've got 5 different species, and counting. 5 different species growing out of this heavily decayed log. And over here we have this other type of mushroom called the fenugreek stalkball. And this one I thought was easy to mistake for a slime mold at first, but you can see me touching it. If it was a slime molds often fall apart when you touch them. So that's how you know that it's the fenugreek stalkball. that's belong to the species Phleogena vaginea. It's a genus with only one species in it. They usually have these white stalks with a white bow on the end, but as they get older, it starts to turn darker. So these are some older specimens. And you can see a spider web too. Someone is living there, and there's an orange egg sac in there. I don't know if there's still babies in there, but hopefully the mom will come home to them if there are. So it's a very fertile log. Shows a little ecosystem inside of it.
I'm your height now, Brailley.
Over here on this decaying log, we have a nice bright orange fungus to brighten up the Halloween season. I couldn't exactly pick up on my camera how nice and bright orange this was, but you can see it a little bit. This is the wrinkled crust, Flebia radiata, which is called that because you can see it looks like a crust and has wrinkles coming out of it that start at a central point and kind of emerge out. It looks like it's spreading across the log. So this is a type of crust fungus, and it produces white spores out of that upper surface. This is the wrinkled crust, Flebia radiata. And here I saved the best, scariest mushroom of them all for last. This is the funeral bell, Gallerina marginata, and it is very aptly named because it is one of the deadliest mushrooms that we have here in Illinois. Some characteristics: it's a little brown mushroom. It's brown. It's got brown gills and brown, like rusty brown spores. It's got this veil on it, the ring around the stem, that is pretty fragile, so it might fall off easily. This is what the ring looks like before the cap expands. When it's young, there's a little veil that covers the gills, and when the cap expands, it just leaves a little ring. But if the ring isn't there, it might have fallen off. The stem is also brown. It grows on wood, and it does not bruise when it's damaged. Those are some characteristics of the funeral bell. It looks pretty inconspicuous, which is why it's also kind of dangerous, because there are some lookalikes that people like to eat, such as the honey mushroom, if you're not paying attention, or the velvet shank. So those are some things to look out for. I think the most important characteristic that distinguishes it from other species that people like to eat is the spore color. It will always have rust brown spores, whereas the velvet shank or the honey mushroom will always be white. And I know it sounds scary, but if you're out in the woods on Halloween tonight and you find the funeral bell mushroom, there's no need to be alarmed, because contrary to popular belief, there are no mushrooms that we know of that can poison you just by touching them. You have to actually eat them, chew them up and swallow them, like pretty much the whole mushroom, in order to have any poison. But if you do end up doing that, then you'll end up losing your liver. So it's something to be cautious of if you're out foraging for mushrooms, so that you don't lose your liver. But also, it's not something to be hysterical over, where you feel like you need to wash your hands immediately if you touch one of them. So those are all the spooky things that are happening out in the woods this Halloween. I hope you enjoyed everything and you learned a lot about the types of things you could find in the fall, as the leaves are falling off the trees, providing nutrients for all different types of critters, and as some other critters are preparing to survive the winter. And I hope you also enjoyed the clips of me at the beach with Brailley on a different day, just like maybe a week before that. So stay tuned for the next one.